What's an example or like a mistake, an onboarding mistake that you've seen before?
Lack of communication expectations. Um, we've we've onboarded people before where you don't really set clearly the expectations are for the next 30, 60, 90 days of like what they're supposed to do for the year. They come in and they have a totally different expectation of what they're supposed to be doing. And that like goes totally awry, right?
Welcome back to another episode of What Worked. In this episode, I sit down with Jason Tan, the CFO and Chief Business Officer of 100 Thieves, a company that has been growing rapidly in the esports industry. We talk about AI for finance organizations, what finance teams look like from pre-seed to post-Series C, and Jason's journey over the past 7 years at 100 Thieves. Definitely a great conversation. Please check it out. Today with us is Jason Tan, the CFO and Chief Business Officer of 100 Thieves. Jason, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can I ask you to just give a brief introduction, who you are, and share a little bit about 100 Thieves?
Yeah. So let's take it way back. Started my career as an engineer, software engineer at Northrop Grumman, which is an aerospace and defense company. Spent a good 3 years there and pretty slow pace. And I was wondering, looking around, I was like, man, am I going to be here in 30 years? And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. So I was like, man, I got to go somewhere else and a little more fast paced. I joined PwC in the advisory group to do consulting. That's where I was exposed to sort of like tech and finance. I was working on carve outs for transaction services. That's where I got like a little bug in with finance. And I wanted to understand like what it was to take a company public or what it was to do an M&A transaction. So I went to business school with a sole focus on getting to investment banking, and wanted to stay on the West Coast, West Coast guy. So landed at the Merrill Lynch office in Los Angeles, which is now B of A, of course, and spent 3 years there as associate. Learned a lot. Knew it wasn't gonna be a lifelong banker. So did the next sort of logical thing. I went to corp dev, which is basically in-house investment banking. So many pictures. There, I was, back in the days, working on OTT services. They had a thing called Crackle that could expand internationally, working on acquiring film libraries, and also at the time, I covered their mobile gaming studios, so working on mobile game acquisitions. From there, one of my old friends in banking went to this company called Riot Games, and he was like, hey, they're building up the finance team. And I was like, okay. And always been a lifelong gamer. Never thought I would be able to work at a video game company. So I jumped at the opportunity to sort of lead finance for one of the divisions. And sort of divisional CFO for the North American Publishing, Global Esports, and Apparel division. And that's where I really learned what it was to like manage finance at a company and in-house, and really sort of like throwing my financial skill set there. Spent 4 years there. Riot experienced phenomenal growth during the time I was there. Midway through I was there, they were 100% acquired by Tencent. And after 4 years, I was like, hey, like I want to become CFO. I want to take that leap. And I left to go join 100 Thieves. The best analogy I can give there is like going from Riot Games to 100 Thieves is the same as going from the NBA league office to the Lakers. And the reason I say that is because 100 Thieves was an esports company at the time, and they just acquired a franchise in League of Legends in Riot's North America League of Legends Championship Series. So that's where the analogy come from.
That's a cool analogy.
And 100 Thieves is today an entertainment lifestyle company rooted in gaming culture. And the things that 100 Thieves offers is that we have esports, so basically teams that compete in professional video games, such as League of Legends, Valorant, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, some of the biggest titles out in the world. And then we have content creators, sort of in the gaming and lifestyle vertical. We have a media network of YouTube channels. Some of the YouTube channels are the largest in the world, such as Jesser and Valkyrie. And we also sell consumer products with our apparel business and also our gaming peripherals business, which is called High Ground. And they sell keyboards, mice, and mouse pads. How we make money through all that is effectively brand sponsorships. So we sell branded content or jersey patches on our jerseys. We sell advertising through our media network. We think about pre-rolls and mid-rolls. We have league revenue, which is basically revenue and prize money from the league, in which they go and sell media rights deals and sponsorships on their own for the entire league. They share a portion with the teams. And we have direct-to-consumer transactions for consumer products business, which is our apparel and gaming peripherals. And lastly, a new revenue stream we have is subscription revenue. So we started a fan and loyalty a rewards program, and as part of that, people can sign up for a year to get unique benefits.
Wow, that's a great overview of 100 Thieves. It's more than I truly understood. Of course, since you've been there, I've been following 100 Thieves, and the big splash, I think, for me was when you guys got Drake and Scooter Braun as investors. I think that was a great media moment, and got them on your cap table and good backing. But it seems like you guys have grown a ton since. Can you talk a little bit about what it felt like, the company, when you joined? What was it, like almost like 7 years ago? 7 years ago, and what it's like today? I imagine it's a little bit different, at least.
Yeah, so I joined when they were seed stage, maybe a couple months after they were formed, pre-revenue. So we had like zero revenue by the time I joined, and now, we scaled to post Series C and also to where we are today with multiple business lines and through acquisitions and organic growth as well. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. I would say the first couple of years was marked by just like, how do we do things? Laying the infrastructure. Just like, for example, I set up our apparel e-commerce workflow with our 3PL and customer support and the ticketing system and everything. I've never done that before. And I set that up with the whole workflow and vendors and hooking it all up. Yeah, we have a team right now who are much more skilled than I ever was. But those are the kind of things from the beginning that we just need to figure out how to do things. And that's on the apparel side. And this goes across like the entire company. It's like, on the finance side specifically, it's just like, how do we make payments? How do we get corporate cards? How do we start banking relationships? So all the nuts and bolts you wouldn't think of if you started a company that's already sort of mature. And then over time, as I laid the infrastructure, next phase was just about scaling. And it's just like, okay, how do we grow the business? Should we make acquisitions? How do we integrate them with the company? What new business lines should we think about? And I would say that was like sort of the scaling phase. And I think probably the last 2 years was all about sustainability. It's like, okay, well, how do we think about profitability? What are the unit economics that we should really be diving in on? What business lines don't work, or should we think about sort of divestitures? So it's been a wild ride over the last 7 years for sure.
Yeah, and I think we'd be remiss to not mention that amongst all this growth, going from pre-revenue to where you guys are today, you are doing it in an industry that is brand new. Esports is a new industry, introduced over this just past decade, and you guys are very much ushering in and leading the charge and growing the industry and becoming one of the kind of like models for businesses that could exist here. So thank you for that. I'd like to double click into the finance org, Jason, if you're okay with that. At Higher Frame, the finance org is one that we work a lot with, whether it's like CPAs, accountants, AR, AP specialists, and we work with companies all the way from, early stage startups to, large enterprises on the New York Stock Exchange and that sort of thing. So I'd love to kind of take a glimpse into your history. What did the finance org look like when you joined, and kind of how has it evolved? Has it evolved in chapters? Has it been a gradual kind of like linear growth? And I guess for me, from the outside in, I don't know what a finance org looks like at a startup, and what it looks like, Series B, Series C, and that sort of thing as it evolves. What's it look like at 100 Thieves?
Yeah, so from the beginning, when I joined C Stage, I was sort of the only person in finance and all of G&A ops, right? So I handle finance, HR, legal, IT facilities. Obviously, now I do not. There's plenty of very, very skilled people who do the job way, way better than I ever did. But that's like, what you sign up for when you join a seed stage company. You're kind of like doing it all. It's like that was the point of joining a startup, like an experience in all these areas. So I was basically a generalist, right? And it's like at that point, you just get to figure out, hey, how do we accomplish whatever we need to set out to do? jumping to the finance team specifically, as you start to scale, and that's, different timelines for every different companies out there. So when we started to scale, I couldn't do everything myself. So I needed to hire, like a finance generalist. So, that's what I did. I hired one person. She was with me the second year in, and she helped with everything at that point: tax, accounting, FP&A. And that's kind of what you need, right? Especially in the beginning phase, it's like you need people who are like willing to roll up their sleeves and do everything and anything, right? So that's the only way to work with a small team to cover all different areas. Then, as you go into the next phase, as you like scale, start to segment the roles into something like specific, right? So at that point in time, we started to need like a dedicated FP&A person. Okay, then now we need a dedicated accounting person. Then we need a dedicated treasury person. So that's where you start to build up a team, and you get sort of like leaders in each of those areas. And then that's at the time when like we started to bring higher framers. But now we have a sort of like a team that like we have an FP&A team, an accounting team, and then like a tax and treasury team.
Got it. So like 3 teams, like 3 finance teams, finance and accounting teams, specialization, more specialization as you guys have grown. And that's meant bringing on specialists.
Yeah, one person works on the accounting team, and she specifically focuses on revenue and revenue recognition as well as ASC 606. So she helps with, accounting of all of our revenue, how it translates to our books, and how it should be recognized over time, including like writing memos for all the different revenue streams that come in for us. And the other person, he works on the treasury team, so he helps with sort of all of our AR, AP, treasury management, corporate cards, anything to do with the transfer of cash as it goes in and out. Another thing there is that when I talked about being a generalist earlier within the broader finance accounting team, at this point, at this stage, our work company is like, we still need people who are generalists, like within the treasury team, because like at a super mature, large organizations, there's people who just do AR, who just do AP, who just do sort of like procurement. But, with a company of our size, we need someone who's like still a generalist within that sub function. So that's like a pretty important distinction.
Yeah. No, thanks for breaking that down for me. One thing that I was curious about actually is I know today your team is like a hybrid team, right? And obviously you joined 100 Thieves pre-COVID, and now we're years past. But that's impacted a lot of organizations in terms of their remote, hybrid, in-office work policies. Where are you guys at today? Obviously, our higher framers are remote team members, but I'm curious to know for your finance org, what does that aspect of their role look like?
Yeah, so I think for us, obviously, we started off with the team fully in person, like every other company pre-COVID. And then once COVID happened, we transitioned to a fully remote team. And now we are a hybrid and remote team. Hybrid for the people who are local to Los Angeles. We come in, at least 2 days a week, sometimes more. And the people who are not in LA are fully remote. One of the things that we're able to navigate this transition to where we are today is because, really we have a culture of like setting clear expectations and measuring success based upon outcomes and deliverables. I think that's like pretty important because my take is that you don't necessarily need to sort of be in the office all the time. I think this goes back to my banking days when like we're up late at night and we're here and it's like, we're waiting to wait a couple hours just to make a couple of comments. And it's like, man, why do I need to be in the office to do this thing? Well, I can just do it at home, and it's like the same thing, So I remember back then, I was like, man, this is like one of the crappiest parts of the job. Well, it's added benefit too because you create camaraderie with people that you're in the pits with. But I always thought like when I get to a sort of leadership position where I have some sort of influence, I'm like, man, I'm not going to care if people are going to be in the office. Like all that matters is like the end outcome is done correctly and accurately, and the work product is important, right? So that's what you're measured against. Like it doesn't necessarily matter if sort of like you're there all the time. Skill my team messaged me like, oh hey, I'm gonna be gone this afternoon from 1 to 3. I'm like, man, you don't need to tell me, like you should be able to manage yourself, like just manage your own time. I already know what you need to do. So just focus on that, right? And as long as you're able to fulfill those deliverables by the deadline, it doesn't really matter how you manage your your time within the day, right? So I think that's good. Um, pretty other important distinction that like has changed over time.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's your leadership philosophy is really aligned with a hybrid or remote work framework. My familiarity with like finance, very broadly is the investment banking days where you had to be in the office. I think it's still like that from what I understand. I think some people I think like what we're learning is like some organizations are better off in person versus others. When you speak to your peers, other CFOs, the finance org, is that one that you think is well suited for remote work, or are a lot of people still doing today the in-office thing?
Yeah, I do think that it's beneficial for people to be together. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily need to be sort of like all the time, 5 days a week, nor would it necessarily be beneficial if we're remote 5 days a week, especially as you onboard new team members or develop culture. But yeah, we're only in office like 2 days a week, and I think it works great for our team. Um, we don't really need to be in more than that, but it's good that we're in sometimes. That's the healthy balance. I think the extremes from before of like, in every day doesn't really make sense for us at this time. But I think generally everyone on the team's like, pretty on board and happy with current schedule. We're able to get a lot done.
And you mentioned onboarding, so I want to actually ask you, I know from our side of things at Hireframe that the Hireframers, the 100 Thieves, have gone through have had a really positive onboarding experience, and specifically on your teams, on the finance teams, but I think across the board too. But could you speak to a little bit about how you and your team, your leaders, onboard new team members, specifically on the finance orgs?
Yeah. So the first thing that, I always ask is, always like ask the team or anyone else is like, what is the onboarding process? Do you have an onboarding process? So like, that's the important part to like detail out before any person comes on. It's like, okay, this is how we're going to onboard them into our tools. This is the information we're going to give them. Here's our 30, 60, 90. So all that needs to be aligned. And then second, we treat the hire framers as if they're part of the team. So it's like, same as if we were hiring someone locally. You need to onboard them in the same manner, right? And treat them as like one of the team. They need to be given the proper context so they can succeed at their job. We invest the time to onboard them, properly and timely, as opposed to just throwing them in, right? So it's just all about process at that point, and just making sure that you can have a process for onboarding in the first place.
Do you have like an onboarding snafu, like a mistake that you look back on? It could be anywhere. It could be, this is just general onboarding question. It could be any company you've worked at. What's an example or like an onboarding mistake that you've seen before?
Lack of communication expectations. We've onboarded people before where you don't really set clearly the expectations are for the next 30, 60, 90 days of like what they're supposed to do for the year. They come in and they have a totally different expectation of what they're supposed to be doing. And that like goes totally awry, right? So
yeah,
that's why it's always important to like clearly outline what are the expectations in the short term, medium term, and long term. That all parties are like, okay, I get it, and here's what I'm working towards too. And then on top of that, if there's a feedback loop on the onboarding process, that how are you going to know how you're performing, right? So it's not even just outlining, hey, here's the expectations, short, medium term. But then once that short term period is over, you come back and look, oh, hey, here's what you accomplished. Here's what we did. This is great. Here's what we didn't finish. Like, here's why. And just have like a look back and say, how can we improve that going forward, right? These things, regular check-ins for the onboarding process about, whether it's like 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever it is. But checking back in is also important. And I've seen like, gone bad in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. You can create a great 30, 60, 90 day plan, but it's not valuable if you're not checking on it and seeing where you're at on things.
Yeah. That's just half the battle, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I've experienced that actually myself too. I'm guilty of doing that. Cool. Thanks for sharing your onboarding. I want to ask you about like your thoughts around building finance and accounting teams. I remember our process when we were just talking about perhaps, Hireframe and 100 Thieves partnering up here to help staff on your team. I don't know if you're open to it, but would you be willing to share kind of like the different alternatives that you were evaluating and how you ultimately landed on working with Hireframe.
Yeah. So I think there's like kind of 5 main options I thought about when like going through this like process. The first option is like what people typically default to, is just like a hire local full-time employee, right? So like that's the simplest process. That's what people know the most. Um, the second option is like hiring a remote contractor, right? Whether locally or remote. And then once you start thinking about remote contractors or contractors in general, then you think about, okay, do I need a person in the US? Or third, should I outsource it to a company that has like a roster of people that help service your needs, right? So like that's a very popular option too, where people like go to an outsourced accounting firm. They like help close your books, but the roster of people rotates every single month depending on their availability. Sometimes you have like different people working on your projects, so you don't have like any continuity, but they help you with the projects. The fourth option here is like where she's like a lot of people don't necessarily know about, is that you have an international remote contractor, and that goes into 2 ways. Into the fourth and fifth option is like one is through a search agency and one is through Hireframe. I think the key differences there is that through a search agency, they help find you a remote contractor internationally, whether it's like the Philippines, Mexico, or whatever country that suits your business needs. But they just sort of, it's a one-time transaction. They walk away after it's done, and they have no sort of like investment in the continued success. Whereas Hireframe is like a very, very different business model where, their outcome and success is based upon continued, success, right? So they want to ensure that person is doing well at your company. They want to make sure that you're happy with the Hireframer. So they're throughout the entire process for as long as the Hireframer is there. So they have a whole team set up to in the back end to ensure the success with the customers.
Thanks for that shout out. Thanks. Thanks. But the Hireframe business model for sure. You explained that really well. And as you were evaluating these different options, you kind of alluded to, but like, was it what was it about our model that made you want to work with us versus some of the alternatives?
Yeah, mainly because of 3 things. First thing is that you're able to find someone with like skill sets. These are like highly skilled folks. For example, the person we have, our revenue rec person, she works on AAC 606. She has experience already in that, right? So it's more, we don't have to teach her that, and she already comes in with that skill set. So it's more about teaching her just our industry. Second is kind of speed to find folks, and really like we're looking for someone, we're trying to look for them as quickly as possible. If our pool's just within our local city, and we have like now like another country, it's like our roster of folks is much bigger. So the likelihood of finding someone quicker is also greatly increased, right? And then third is just cost effectiveness, right? Like depending on what your salary is, like it could be a third of the cost. And when you think of it like that really allows you to scale up your team even further, make your dollars go a whole lot longer. It's like, hey, instead of hiring one full-time person, I can hire 2 or 3. And on top of that, that benefit for our current employees that we have here locally is that it allows them to like step into at different roles, add more responsibilities, continue to let them grow, right? As opposed to like them working on the same thing. So, our framers relieved our current full-time employees and managers of tasks that they were previously doing and allow them to focus on new things to help them grow in their career as well.
That's great to hear, actually, that your existing team, that sounds like, has been elevated to take on new responsibilities, work on more strategic type initiatives. That's great. No, thank you for sharing. I have to ask you, maybe you get asked this all the time, but I have to ask you about AI. It's just like all the talk right now. And I'm also just personally curious about AI, and specifically around like finance teams. What are you guys doing with AI today, if anything? And like, where are we today with AI, specifically for accounting and finance teams?
I think there's like a couple of different ways to look at AI. I personally use AI, take your LLM of choice in my personal day-to-day, right? Help me sort of write emails, synthesize documents, summarize next steps, and review whatever contracts. And it's like really good at that, right? Like your personal sort of assistant, as you could say. I think that's like really important. And I've been encouraging everyone on our team to provide examples of like how they use AI to boost productivity, personal productivity, I would say. And that's actually one of our team goals. I think that's like really impactful there, but that's when I mentioned that that's just on the personal productivity side. And when you go on to enterprise side, I think that's a totally different story. I think we're still very early on. And to give you an example, we onboarded to this FP&A tool that uses AI that could replace our current FP&A tool. And I would say that it hasn't worked to what we thought it was going to be working as, and it's still taking a lot of configuration. The data isn't correct, but I can see the potential, but it's not there yet, right? I think that's like on the enterprise level, I think we're still sort of very early on. And I know it's eventually going to happen, but depends on like when it happens on the year or two. That's like on the finance of Civic AI tool enterprise side. And then on the third side is that now we're seeing AI being integrated to whatever SaaS tools that you currently use, right? So your expense management, your accounts payable software. So every company is integrating AI into that. So I think that's just like a benefit that everyone's going to see and use because every company has to keep up. But yeah, in terms of like new products that are AI specific, that's like very, very sort of like we're still very early on.
Cool. We're
Yeah,
early.
we're testing now. Yeah,
We're early, and it's good to be experimenting right now. I think is what you're saying.
yeah, it's good to be experimenting. If you're not using AI for your personal stuff, that means you're just not being as effective. So you definitely should be using it in your personal day to day to look at anything, research or whatever it may be. Even create research reports has been pretty awesome. But in terms of like enterprise level and replacing tools that you currently have, I think we're still sort of early on.
Yeah, this is a challenge to everyone who's building tools for the finance or the office of the CFO, AI platforms and software, a challenge to meet Jason's expectations. So we're not there yet, but keep building. Keep building.
I mean,
No.
this goes for not even just finance, it goes for everything. Like I've heard people talk about, they'll just have AI build software to replace like your CRM, like Salesforce, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen anything yet. I know Klarna has talked about them replacing, but they have like tons of engineers. They probably built it in-house.
Yeah.
But that's only if you have like a huge engineering organization, which we don't. So we can't necessarily do bespoke software to do something like that. But yeah, that's kind of where
makes sense. Cool. No, thank you, Jason. Really grateful for your time. I want to start wrapping up here a little bit, but one thing I did want to touch on was, I think it was last year, you went from being the CFO to CFO and Chief Business Officer. I saw the LinkedIn announcement notification. Tell me more about that. What does this new role entail? I imagine broader scope. Tell us more.
Yeah, it's just a broader scope. It's being a CFO, it's not just purely about the numbers. But really a chief business officer now is like, how do I help the company scale sustainably, right? I think in the past, especially during the zero interest rate policy era, it was all about chasing growth at all costs, right? It's like, how do we go top line and with no regard for sort of profitability? And I think in this environment, I think it's a little different. But now it's like, okay, how does profitability factor into that, right? Obviously, we still need to grow our top line revenue, but it's like, okay, how do we factor in profitability and revenue and think about sustainability as we scale moving forward, right? And really, I think about sort of like our revenue streams, potential new revenue streams, thinking about sort of what makes sense for the company, how does it all fit together. So it's kind of like one step, so removed from just strictly the numbers, and it's more just about like, what is our business model per se.
And as we wrap up here, I want to ask you just what's one thing you're excited about at 100 Thieves, or one thing that you recently worked on that's exciting that you'd like to share with the audience here?
Our most recent marketing activation was pretty big for 100 Thieves. Yeah, what we did was that Blackpink is one of the largest, music groups in the world. They're a famous K-pop group, and one of their members, Lisa, was launching her solo album globally. And we were able to, co-market her album launch specifically with her fan and meet and greet and store sales here in Los Angeles at our office. So we actually turned our office into like a 7-day pop-up store for Lisa and her fans for her to come buy apparel and merchandise. And we actually also sold it on our website as well. And on top of that, she also had a real life meet and greet at our office with a select number of fans, including some of our content creators who did an interview with her. But yeah, that was a really great co-marketing opportunity because we brought the fans of 100 Thieves into Lisa's world, into the K-pop world, and vice versa, right? So it's a collaboration people didn't see coming. But that really just shows the brand and brand power of 100 Thieves and bringing gaming culture into the limelight.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I saw the work that you guys were doing, and I was intrigued because I know how big Blackpink is. And then I checked out Lisa's Instagram. I think she's got many millions of followers, obviously. But what was interesting was like she's bigger than Drake, Justin Bieber. Like she's huge. I didn't realize how big she is as one of the members of Blackpink.
100 million plus followers, and I think K-pop fans are pretty rabid. It's their fandom is second to none, I would say.
That's awesome. Cool, Jason. Well, thank you so much. For anyone who's listened and maybe if they want to reach out to you, is there a place they can do that, or do you have any kind of call to action? Anyone who's checked this conversation out?
Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat anytime about Wireframe, this or 100 Thieves. But yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. My DMs are open.
Thanks, Jason. Great convo.
Thanks for having me.